Yeah. So sometimes, yeah, but it's posted somewhere. Like, sometimes the Zoom is. Yes. Now it's not letting you. Anymore.
Should I mute myself?
Yeah, you just turn your mic off.
L'shana tova tikatevu. Shabbat shalom. Good yantif. L'shana tova. Good morning, Boker Tov. What a joy to be with you today. It is an honor and a pleasure to welcome you today and to be joined by Cantor, Belinda, and Meg Gister, and our incredible tech crew who have helped to make this possible, as well as our gabbis and everyone behind the scenes who has worked so hard to help bring this experience in our beloved sanctuary to you at home so that we can feel like a true CBSRZ mishpacha, our wonderful congregational family. It is so nice to see you and to be able to be with you today on this Rosh HaShanah morning, this first day of the new year. The sun is shining. It is 5781, and we are here. It's a Shabbat morning, and it is a pleasure to be with you. I know it's not the same. I know we are on Zoom, and we are looking at each other in little boxes, and it's not what we're used to. It is strange to look at each other in this way, but we Jews endure, and we adapt. And as I mentioned last night, we also incredibly survive, and we come up with new ways of making our tradition work. And look, we are experiencing something that has never, ever happened in the history of Judaism. We are praying through the technology that exists and didn't exist even 10 years ago. And we are still experiencing high holy days together. And just a reminder that be patient with us. There may be snags along the way, but it's okay because we're a family and things happen with family. But a reminder to you all that with Zoom comes, the little responsibility that we can see each other. So, when you're home and I say please rise, I hope that you're keeping the camera in appropriate places in case you're not fully dressed. And also, if you happen to take the camera into places in your home that you may not want seen by everybody else in the Zoom world that is with you today, please remember to turn your camera off for a few minutes, okay? Just a reminder. Not that that's happened yet, but, just to remember, you got a camera on you. And we do want to see each other's faces for the rest of it, but I've heard horror stories from colleagues. So just remember. But it is nice to be able to see each other's faces. So to the extent that you're comfortable keeping your camera on, that would be great. Likewise, please keep yourself muted. Why? Because a limitation of Zoom is that we can only hear one voice or sound at a time. And so we hope you want to hear either the speaker or the music that is being played. And so if you were to unmute yourself, you wouldn't be able to hear the rabbi or the cantor or the music that's being played. So please do keep yourself muted at all times. That is very helpful to us. Otherwise, there's only one sound and the sound would be canceled out. So again, please keep yourself muted. And we do have a moderator who is helping to do that. So if you find yourself getting muted, it's just that my husband, Seth Lindenman, is helping out with that. So thank you, Seth, for helping with that. Things do feel different, and we recognize that, but we appreciate your patience as well as your willingness to try this whole new thing. Hopefully you have the machzor with you. Either you borrowed one from our congregation sometime this past week, or you have accessed one online. Seth has been sharing the link to the free flip book that you can access on a separate device, and it is, again, available for free. You can access it on a phone or on a separate laptop or iPad so that you can be following along. It is paginated exactly the same way, and so as I announce page numbers, you should have no problem following along. We are so grateful to just be able to connect and to be together in this way. Last but not least, I know that weighing heavily on our hearts this morning is the loss of our beloved Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, a member of the tribe. And though we are not officially able to mourn her yet because of Jewish tradition, and so we can't mention her in the mourner's Kaddish until she has officially been buried, we are mourning her, and we feel very keenly her loss. And so I do just want to mention that, and we feel that very much in our hearts, and we already miss her, such a hero to so many of us. And so, nonetheless, we feel the sweetness of today. We feel the hope of moving forward as a community, and we know that she gave us so much to be inspired by and to move forward and to work towards justice and peace. And so together we move now into our Machzor on page 111. So please join me in our Machzor, again, page 111. Page 121. You have taught us, guard yourselves well. Take good care of your lives. Your word calls to us, do no harm to yourself. Do not weaken or exhaust yourself. In gratitude for the gift of our bodies, we pray for a year of renewed health and replenished strength. May caring for our bodies become our daily practice. May we be attentive to our need for proper food, sleep, and exercise. Let no injury come to others through our acts or failure to act. But let our mitzvah be this: to build a just society in which care is a birthright and the blessing of health the responsibility of all. Baruch atah Adonai, rofei chol basar umafli la'asot. We praise you, Holy One, for wondrous acts of creation and healing.
Elohai neshama shenatata bi tehorai. Elohai neshama shenatata bi tehorai. Elohai neshama tata bi tehorai. Elohai
And starting on page 124, we have a group of prayers known as Nisim B'chol Yom, the miracles that we pray we will experience every single day. And we are so honored to have one of our teen leaders leading these prayers, Sadie Cohen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan l'sefri vina להבחין בין יום ובין לילה. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, Pokeach ivri. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, Matir asuri. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, Zokef kefufi. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, Rokach haaretz al hamayim. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, she'asa li kol tzorki. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu hamechin mitzadei gaver. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, malbish harumi. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, hanoten laya'it koach. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, hama'avir shena me'enai, u'tuma be'afapai. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, she'asani b'tselem Elohim. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, she'asani bat chori. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, she'asani Yisrael. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, Ozer Yisrael b'gvura. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, Oter Yisrael b'tifara.
Yasher koach.
Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Kol hayamat hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Kol hanshamat hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah.
And now we invite you all who are able, to please turn to page 142 for the Baruch. Please rise.
Barechu et Adonai hamevorach. Baruch Adonai hamevorach leolam va'ed.
This has been a year filled with surprising moments of need and loss, and of appreciation and gratitude. We never could have imagined how much toilet paper or Lysol would come to mean to us, or that we'd be complimenting each other on the new mask someone was wearing. This new normal, as many have come to call it, is not something we've asked for. And many have many different feelings about it. Grief, anger, sadness, loneliness. But it also has brought out a side of humanity at its best. Kindness, creativity, compassion, and generosity. It's in these moments, at our best, that I feel that God is with us, giving us the strength to carry on. Please join me on page 147. I am the blossom pressed in a book, found again after 200 years. I am the maker, the lover, and the keeper. When the young girl who starves sits down to a table, she will sit beside me. I am the food on the prisoner's plate. I am water rushing to the wellhead, filling the pitcher until it spills. I am the patient gardener of the dry and weedy garden. I am the stone step, the latch, and the working hinge. I am the heart contracted by joy, the longest hair white before the rest. I am there in the basket of fruit presented to the widow. I am the musk rose opening unattended, the fern on the boggy summit. I am the one whose love overcomes you, already with you when you think to call my name. Page 150.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto, Le'olam Va'ed.
You may be seated.
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם להיות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
אמת. Page 163. Remember the stories of slavery, and you will never stop working for freedom. Remember their fear at the edge of the sea, and self-doubt will never defeat you. Remember when desperation turned to celebration, and you will never let go of hope. Remember the words of the Baal Shem Tov: forgetfulness leads to exile. Remembrance is the secret of redemption.
And my page. מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נדר בקודש, נורת קהילות אוסף שירה חדשה, שבחו גאולים לשמך, שפת הים, יחד כולם, הודו והמלכו ויאמרו, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. צור ישראל, קומה בעזרת ישראל, ופתחנו מלכה, יהודה וישראל, גואלנו, אדוני צבאות שמו, קדוש ישראל. ברוך אתה, אדוני, גאל ישראל.
And on page 166, we come now to the tefillah, one of the central prayers of our worship service on this Rosh HaShanah morning. And I invite all who are able to please rise.
Adonai, Adonai, Sefatai tiftach, ufi yagid tehilatecha. Adonai, Adonai, open up my lips, that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei avoteinu ve'imoteinu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak ve'Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel ve'Elohei Leah Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor ve'Hanora El Elyon Gomel Chasadim Tovim V'konei Ha'kol V'zocher Chasdei Avot V'imahot U'mevii Geula Livnei V'neihem Lema'an Shemo Be'ahava Zachreinu Zachreinu L'chaim Melech Chafetz b'chaim V'chotveinu B'sefer ha'chaim Leman chalayim chaim Melech ozer Moshiach u'magen Baruch atah Adonai Magen Avraham Ve'ezrat Sarah אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי הכל אתה רב להושיע, מוריד הטל, מחכה חיים וחסד, מחיי הכל ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר, מי כמוך בגבורות ומי דומה לך, מלך ממיד ומחיה ומצמיח ישועה. מי כמוך, מי כמוך, אל הרחמים, זוכר יצוריו לחיים ברחמים, ונאמן אתה לחיות הכל. ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי הכל.
Please be seated. We turn now together to page 173 for an introduction to Unatan Tokef. And this is from my beloved teacher, Rabbi Dr. Aaron Pankin of beloved memory. Our actions help us live in such a way that when we suffer life's darkest depredations, we will always have ways of coping with them. Our actions may not change the ultimate outcome one iota, but they alter our attitude, bolster our ability to withstand challenges, help us handle unavoidable misfortunes better, and see life's value amid chaos and dismay. Page 174. Let us proclaim the power of this day, a day whose holiness awakens deepest awe and inspires highest praise for your dominion. For your throne is a throne of love, your reign is a reign of truth. in truth. You are judge and plaintiff, counselor and witness. You inscribe and seal. You record and recount. You remember all that we have forgotten, and when you open the book of memories, it speaks for itself. For every human hand leaves its mark and imprint like no other. And those at home, I invite you to read with me. And so a great shofar will cry Tekiah. A still small voice will be heard. Angels in a whirl of fear and trembling will say, behold the day of judgment, for they too are judged. In your eyes, even they are not blameless. All who come into the world pass before you, like sheep before their shepherd. As a shepherd considers the flock when it passes beneath the staff, you count and consider every life. You set bounds, you decide destiny, you inscribe judgments.
Rosh HaShanah, uvyom som kippur, uvyom som kippur, yechatenu, uvyom som kippur, uvyom som kippur, kama ya'avorun v'chama yibareyun, mi yeh u'mi yamut, mi v'kitzor, u'mi lo v'kitzor. Rosh HaShanah, yichatevun, uvyom som kippur, uvyom som kippur, yechatevun. Mi va'esh u'mi va'mayim, mi va'kerev u'mi va'chaya, mi va'ra'av u'mi va'tzama, mi va'ra'ash u'mi va'magefa, mi va'chanika u'mi va'skila. Rosh HaShanah, yichatevun, uvyom som kippur, uvyom som kippur, yechatevun. Mi yanuach u'mi yanuach, mi Torah. Mishaleh umid yaser mi ya'ani umi ya'ashir mi yushkam Rosh
On Rosh HaShanah, this is written. On the fast of Yom Kippur, this is sealed. How many will pass away from this world? How many will be born into it? Who will live and who will die? Who will reach the ripeness of age? Who will be taken before their time? Who by fire and who by water? Who by war and who by beast? Who by famine and who by drought? Who by earthquake and who by plague? Who by strangling and who by stoning? Who will rest and who will wander? Who will be tranquil and who will be troubled? Who will be calm and who tormented? Who will live in poverty and who in prosperity? Who will be humbled and who exalted?
Utshuva, utfilah, utzedakah, ma'avirin et roah, agzerah.
But through return to the right path, through prayer and righteous giving, we can transcend the harshness of the decree. You are everything that we praise you for, slow to anger, quick to forgive. You do not wish the death of sinners, but urge them to return from their ways and live. Until the day of death, you wait for them. You accept them at once if they return. Since you created us, you know our impulses. We are but flesh and blood. We who are mortal, our origin is dust and so is our end. We wear out our lives to get our bread, like broken vessels, like withered grass, like a flower that must fade, a shadow moving on, a cloud passing by, mere dust on the wind, a dream that flies away. But for you, ever-living sovereign, time has no limits. Your presence, unbounded by days and years, is everywhere. A glorious mystery none can decipher. Your name is worthy of you, and you are worthy of your name. And our name you have linked with yours. Please rise.
Mekadesh et shimcha ba'olam, כשם שמקדישים אותו בשמי מרום, ככתוב היה נביאך, וכרזלתם בימם. קדוש, 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 אדוני צבאות, מלוא הארץ כבודו. אדיר, אדירנו, אדוני, אדוני, אדוננו, מה אדיר שמך בכל הארץ. ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו. אחד הוא אלוהינו, הוא אבינו, הוא מלכנו, הוא מושיענו, והוא ישמיענו ברחמיו לעיני כל חי. אני אדוני אלוהיכם. ימלוך אדוני לעולם, אלוהי ציון, לדור ודור, הללויה.
Please be seated.
We are about to hear the next prayer, L'dor v'dor, in a way that we haven't been able to hear it in 6 years. As many of you know, this past May, we lost the beautiful soul of John D. Nicola, beloved congregant, teacher, musician, and my cantorial partner on the bima for over 20 years. If there is a silver lining to our circumstances this year, it's the tech that gives us the opportunity to hear John's voice again. And it's fitting that the one prayer that we were able to record together is this one, L'dor v'dor, which translates to generation, as these words are sung for those who came before us, for those who are present now, and for those who will come after us. May John's precious memory be for many, many blessings.
L'dor v'dor, l'dor v'dor, l'dor v'dor, nagid God lecha, u'lanetzach netzachim, u'lanetzach netzachim, kedushatcha nakdish. L'dor v'dor, מפינו לא ימוש לעולם ועד, כי המלך גדול וקדוש לדור ודור, לדור ודור, לדור ודור נגיד עד לך, ולנצח נצחים, ולנצח נצחים, קדושתך הקדיש. ברוך אתה
We all need some time to let that sit on and in our hearts. And fittingly, it's time for silent prayer. So from page 186 to page 220, and skipping past the shofar services, I invite you to pray the words on the page, the words of your own hearts and souls, words of gratitude, words of pain, words of pleading, whatever you need to say to God right now. If you need to wipe tears away, whatever you need to say, we take moments now of silent, quiet prayer. I hope you've been enjoying the beautiful music of our choir under the wise and loving direction of Meg Gister, and with the magical audio engineering of Pat Smith. As you may know, one of our biggest concerns as we entered the High Holy Days was how were we going to incorporate choral music into our service, knowing that we couldn't sing together using social distancing and knowing that music was going to be so hard to create together in one space. And so our choir very incredibly submitted individual tracks of music and sang all on their own, all of these pieces, and these tracks were mixed together into these beautiful videos that you have been enjoying. And I just wanted to take a moment to appreciate that. There's so many more to come throughout our holy days, and you'll hear them again. And it's really such a work of passion and an art. And so thank you to Meg and to Pat and to our incredible choir members that you have really, it's been a labor of love, I know, and it's most appreciated. So kol hakavod, yasher koach to all of you. So now we turn back in our machzorim to page 222 for Avinu Malkeinu, and I'm going to invite everyone to please rise, and we are honored to have as our readers Sandy and Andrea Seidman. Please rise.
Loving Father, infinite power, healing, lofty, inscrutable, Avinu Malkeinu. Compassionate Mother, omnipotent Lord, comforting presence, fathomless mystery, Avinu Malkeinu. Our rock and redeemer, light of the universe, close to us always, impossibly far, Avinu Malkeinu. Embracing, confounding, accepting our frailty, decreeing our end, Avinu Malkeinu. None of these are true. None of them are you, yet we stand as those before us have stood, summoned to judgment for love. May these words be abridged. They come from our hearts. May they lead us to you.
Avinu Malkeinu Shema Kuleinu Avinu Malkeinu Chatanu Lefanecha Avinu Malkeinu Chamol Aleinu V'yalol Aleinu V'tapeinu Avinu Malkeinu Kale Dever V'cherev Ra'av Me'aleinu Avinu Malkeinu Kalei Kotzar Umasrin Me'aleinu Avinu Malkeinu Avinu Malkeinu Kadmeinu B'sefer Chaim Tovim Avinu Malkeinu Kadesh Aleinu Avinu Malkeinu Adrei Adrei Keren Israel Amecha Avinu Malkeinu Chaneinu Vaneinu Ki ein banu ma'asim Aseh imanu Tzedakah v'chesed v'hoshienu Avinu Malkeinu Shema Koleinu
And now we will turn together to Seder Kriyat Torah, the service surrounding the reading of our Torah, which will be a little different than it usually is for Rosh HaShanah. But of course, we will still hear parts of our Torah reading for this Rosh Hashanah morning, and we have wonderful readers as well as aliyot that you will get to hear from people at their homes. Turn with us, please, to page 228, and please rise. Oh, you're still risen, aren't you? Thank you for being still risen. We're going to reopen the ark.
Adonai, Adonai, El Rachum V'Chanun, Erech Apayim V'Rav Chesed V'Emet, Notzer Chesed La'alafim, Nosei Avon V'Fesha, V'Chata V'Nakeh. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, kadosh v'nora shemo gadlu l'Adonai iti unerom ema shemo yachdav. Lecha Adonai hagedula v'hagevura v'hatiferet v'hanetzach v'hahod ki chol b'shamayim u'va'aretz ki chol b'shamayim u'va'aretz Lecha Adonai hamamlacha v'yamin na'aseh lechol rosh.
You may be seated. And this time we mean it. So this was, of course, one of the parts of the service that we were most concerned about, where we wanted to make sure that we could maintain the specialness of our day and the participation of our congregants while still being safe. And so what we decided to do is make sure that we have our Torah out, and we'll be following along here, while our wonderful readers and blessers are at home. And so for our first Aliyah, we have Andy Schatz, our congregational president, and reading will be Ellen Nodelman, and you can follow along in your Machzor with the reading of Genesis 22, the binding of Isaac, on page 240.
Ya'amod asher ben shalom echal v'nechama harishona.
Baruchu et Adonai hamvorach. Baruch Adonai hamvorach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten ha'Torah.
Amen.
Amen. Vayahi ahar avarim ha'ele ve'ha'elohim nisah et Abraham vayomer elav Abraham vayomer hineni Vayomer takna et binha et yehidha asher ahasta et yitzhak v'lech lecha el eretz hamoria ve'halehu sham leolah Asher Omar Alecha Vayushkem Avraham Baboker Veyakavahu Shet Hamorahu Vayikar Et Shnei Neherav Yitro V'et Yitzhak Beno Vayukar Aseh Olah V'yahakam V'yelek El Hamakom Asher Amalo HaElohim
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torat emet, v'chayei olam nata b'dachenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Yasher koach. Thank you so much. And it's worth mentioning that Ellen Nodelman was chanting in High Holy Day trope. So you might have noticed it sounded different than the way we chant Torah trope the rest of the year. So thank you. Yasher koach to you both. And now for our second aliyah this Rosh Hashanah morning, it is an honor to invite up to bless the Torah reading Erica Yudof and to read from the Torah itself, Rita Christopher.
Ta'amal Rivka Bad Mikdu Benda Hashenit.
Baruch Adonai Hambarak.
Baruch Adonai Havarach Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hambarak Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bakar banu ha'amin, v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Amen. Bayom hashlishi, vayisa Avraham et enav, vayaret hamakom meraho. Vayomer Avraham el naharav, ulachem po nimhahamor, ba'ani b'hanahar, mechato, v'nishtahave, v'nashuva alehem. Vayikach Avraham et aseh haolam, vayasem el Yitzhak bano, vayikach vayado et ha'esh, et ha'mahachelet, vayalku shenehem yachdav.
Erica. We need Erica.
Unmuted. Okay. Unmuted. So rare. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torat emet, v'chayei olam natan b'tohenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Can we point out what Erica is sitting in front of?
Yasher Koach and Erica,
Yes. Oh,
tell us about your background.
Can you bring her back? Can you bring her back for a second?
Can we unmute Erica and see her background?
She's in our sanctuary.
Or above
Always
it? Or
Hovering?
It's actually backwards because it's Zoom. So it's a mirror image, but one day you'll be there too. Like what it's gonna look like. That's how we figured it out. So that's it. But it's backwards. Yeah, you don't have
it's
to
a model. Yeah, it's a model of the Bima renovations that we will be doing at some point. And oh, the little Spencer's not there right now, right?
No, the little Spencer's not there, and the candles fell down. But
And the candles fell down.
yeah,
And the little Meg is not there.
little Meg's not there. We didn't order, if you must know. Otherwise, yes, if you recognized it, you get it. So.
Cool.
Yasher Koach.
Well, Yasher Koach to both of you. Thank you. And now for our third aliyah. It is an honor to invite Izzy Greenberg and Jeff Cohen for the blessings and Barbara Infeld for our reading.
Yamdu Miriam bat Tzok ben Nancy Yaakov ben Yosef Yudeth Hashlishit.
Baruch hu et Adonai Hamborah,
Baruch Adonai Havarach Leolam Vaed.
Baruch Adonai Habarach Leolam Vaed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam Asher Bachar Banu Mikol Ha'amim V'natan Lanu Et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai Notein HaTorah.
Amen.
Amen. Vayomer Yitzhak El Abraham Aviv. Vayomer Avi. Vayomer Hineni Veni. Vayomer Hine Haish V'Ha'etzim V'Ayeh Haseh Leolah. Vayomer Avraham Elohim Yir Elo Haseh Leolah Beini Vayehu Shnechem Yachdav Vayavo El Hamakom Asher Amalo HaElohim Vayiven Sham Avraham Et HaMizbeach Vayarok Et HaEtzim Vayakod Et Yitzhak Benaho Vayasem Oto Al HaMizbeach Mimala Eitzim.
Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam Asher Natan Lanu Torat Emet V'chayei Olam Natan Betochenu. Baruch Atah Adonai Notein HaTorah.
Amen. Yasher Koach. And by the way, a little bit of congregational trivia for you is that Izzy was a member of our recent adult Benot Mitzvah class, so an extra mazel tov to her. That was really exciting. They just celebrated a couple of weeks ago, so an extra mazel tov to her. Now, while the Torah is out in our midst, we take a moment to offer prayers of healing to those in our families, our congregation, our community, and our world who need healing. And there are so many who need healing. And so please take a moment to think of those in your lives who need healing and extend your prayers beyond to anyone who you feel you want to send your prayers to, and hold them in your hearts as we offer a prayer to them all. Mishaberach Avotenu Avraham Yitzchak v'Yaakov v'imotenu Sarah Rivka Leah v'Rachel hu yivarech v'yirapeh et kol hacholim ha'ela. May the one who blessed all of our ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Leah, and Rachel, bless and heal and give peace to all who are ill. We pray, O God, that you bless their family members and their caregivers with wisdom, with patience, and with courage as they travel along the pathways of illness and of suffering and hopefully, God willing, of healing. Baruch atah Adonai Rofeh HaCholim. We praise you, O God, who cares for the sick. And let us all say together, Amen. And now on page 274, we continue with the dressing, well, the lifting and then the dressing of the Torah, Hagba and Galila. And because I am a super rabbi, I will be doing the lifting of the Torah, but really, this is our smallest Torah, so it's not so impressive, but I'm going to be doing it anyway. So when the Torah is lifted, please rise.
וזאת התורה אשר שם משה לפני בני ישראל על פי אדוני ביד משה רוממו אדוני אלוהינו והשתחוו להקדשו. רוממו אדוני אלוהינו והשתחוו להקדשו. כי קדוש אדוני אלוהינו רוממו. כי קדוש אדוני אלוהינו רוממו. אדוני אלוהינו והשתחוו להקדשו. רוממו אדוני אלוהינו והשתחוו להקדשו.
Please be seated. And a moment of recognition as well to members of our RITC, our Ritual and Celebration Committees, for changing all of our Torah covers to white and making our silver so sparkly and beautiful. Thank you all. Now we turn to page 250. Let's jump back to page 250. Through 253 for our Haftarah portion this morning. We will all be joining together in the blessings. We'll join with Cantor Belinda. The blessings are on page 247 and 259. I know this is a lot to remember, but our readers for the Haftarah will be Ruth Levy and Stephen Nardine.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar b'nviim tovim v'ratzav livreihem hane'emarim be'emet. Baruch atah Adonai abocher b'torah u'b'Moshe Avdo uV'Yisrael Amo uV'Nvi'ei ha'emet v'tzedek.
Again, page 250.
Through the eternal, my heart knows joy. And there was a man named Ramatagim, Tophim, from the hills of Ephraim, whose name was Elkanah, son of Yeroham, son of Eliyahu, son of Toshu, son of Tuf, and Ephraimite. And he had 2 wives, one named Hannah, and the other named Peninnah. Peninnah had children, and Hannah had no children. And this man would go up from his town every year to worship at Shiloh and make offerings to the Eternal of heaven's hosts. And there were Eli's 2 sons, Shophini and Pinchas, were priests of the Eternal. And on the day when Elkanah would make offerings, he would give portions to his wife Peninnah and to each of her sons and daughters. And to Hannah he would give a special portion, because he loved Hannah, and the Eternal had closed her womb. And her rival wife would taunt her cruelly to make her tremble with grief, for the Eternal had closed her womb. And so it was year after year, when she would go up to the house of the Eternal, she taunted her, and she would cry and not eat. And Elkanah, her husband, said to her, Hannah, why do you cry? And why do you not eat? And why are you disheartened? Am I not worth more to you than 10 sons? And Hannah arose after eating and drinking at Shiloh, when Eli the priest sat upon the throne, near the doorpost of the temple of the Eternal. And she, bitter to the core, prayed to the Eternal, weeping and crying. And she vowed and said, Eternal of heaven's hosts, if you will truly see your servant's affliction and remember me, and not forget your servant, and give me, your servant, a son. I will give him to the Eternal all the days of his life, and no razor shall be lifted to his head. And as her praying before the Eternal intensified, Eli watched her mouth, and as Hannah, she was speaking only with her heart. Through her lip, though her lips were moving, her voice could not be heard. So Eli thought she was drunk, and Eli said to her, "How long will you persist in drunkenness? Put away your wine, get rid of it." And Hannah answered and said, "No, my lord, a woman of sorrow am I. I drank neither wine nor spirits, but poured out my soul before the Eternal. Do not take your servant for a worthless woman. All this time I have spoken from the depth of my anger, from the greatness of my grievance." Then Eli answered and said, "Go in peace, and may the God of Israel grant the request you have made." And she said, "May your servant find grace in your sight." And the woman went on her way, and she ate, and her face was no longer as it had been. And they awoke early in the morning and worshipped before the Eternal. And they went home, returning to Ramah. And Elkanah knew Hannah his wife, and the Eternal remembered her. And so it was that at the turn of the year, Hannah conceived, and then gave birth to a son. And she called him Samuel, because I requested him from the Eternal.
And the man Elkanah and his whole household went up to make the annual offerings to the Eternal and to fulfill his vow. But Hannah did not go up, for she said to her husband, "Until the boy is weaned, then I will bring him. Once he appears before the Eternal, he will stay there forever." Elkanah, her husband, said to her, "Do what you think is best. Wait until you have weaned him. Surely the Eternal will fulfill what your mouth has uttered." So the woman stayed and nursed her son until she weaned him. When she had weaned him, she took him up with her with a 3-year-old bull, 1 ephah of flour, and a skin of wine, and brought him to the house of the Eternal to Shiloh. And the boy was young. They slaughtered the bull and brought the boy to Eli. And she said, "Please, my lord, as you live, my lord, I am the woman who stood here with you, praying to the Eternal. It was for this boy that I prayed, and the Eternal granted my request. I, in turn, grant what the Eternal asks him. As long as he lives, he is dedicated to the Eternal." And there they worship the Eternal. And Hannah prayed, saying, "Through the Eternal, my heart knows joy. Through the Eternal, my horn is raised. My mouth opens wide against my foes, for I exult in your deliverance. There is nothing holy like the Eternal, for there is nothing besides you, and there is no rock like our God. Speak no more in lofty tones. Let arrogance leave your mouths. All-knowing is the eternal God, whose deeds cannot be measured. The bows of the mighty are broken, while those who falter find strength. Those who are full sell themselves for bread, and the hungry hunger no more. The one who is barren bears 7, and the mother of many is bereaved. The Eternal is the maker of death and life, takes down the Sheol and brings back up. The Eternal makes poverty and wealth, casts low and raises aloft, lifts the poor from the dust, causes the needy to rise from dung heaps and dwell among princes, then places them on thrones of honor. For the pillars of the earth belong to the Eternal, who founded the world upon them, who watches over the steps of the faithful while turning evildoers silent in the darkness. For not by power shall a human being prevail. The Eternal shatters foes, thunders against them in the heavens. The Eternal judges the earth from end to end. So may God give us strength to the sovereign and rise high the horn of God's anointed.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, tzor kol haolamim, tzadik b'chol adorot, ha'el ha'ne'eman, ha'omer v'yoseh, המדבר ומקיים שכל דבריו אמת וצדק, על התורה ועל העבודה ועל הנביאים ועל יום השבת הזה ועל יום הזיכרון הזה, שנתת לנו אדוני אלוהינו לקדושה ולמנוחה, לכבוד ולתפארת. על הכל אדוני אלוהינו, אנחנו מודים לך ומברכים אותך, יתברך שמך בפי כל חי תמיד לעולם ועד, וברכה אמת וקיים לעד. ברוך אתה אדוני מלך כל הארץ, מקדש השבת בישראל ויום הזיכרון.
Amen. Yasher koach. Okay, just moving. All right, Shana Tova again, and Shabbat Shalom, and Good Yantif, and Lashana Tova, and all the wonderful greetings we have for each other on this Rosh Hashanah morning. Well, I invite you to consider a quote from Morgan Freeman. I knew at an early age I wanted to act. Acting was always easy for me. I don't believe in predestination, but I do believe that once you get wherever it is you are going, that is where you were going to be. Was I always going to be here? No, I was not. I was going to be homeless at one time, a taxi driver, truck driver, or any kind of job that would get me a crust of bread. You never know what's going to happen. Is Morgan Freeman right? I mean, he did play God in the movie Bruce Almighty, so some part of me really wants to believe him. But do we never know what's going to happen? Or are our lives set into motion at the very beginning of the story, and we are just carried passively along? In many parts of the Bible, this almost seems to be the case. We see the hand of God present not only in the big miraculous interventions, but also in the everyday lives of our ancestors. Now, throughout the month of Elul, I warmly encouraged you to ready yourselves for the soul-searching work of the High Holy Days. And last night, we began actively pondering the transformative power of this season. And this morning, now, we're going to consider another layer. Do we actually have choice? Do we have free will? Now, predictably, the Tanakh, the Bible, does not deal with this issue uniformly. On one hand, it states in Deuteronomy, in a portion that we read on Yom Kippur, I set before you this day life and death, blessing and curse. Choose life, if you and your offspring would live. We have choice. But on the other hand, in another place in the Bible, in the book of Proverbs, we learn many designs are in a person's mind, but it is God's plan that is accomplished. This has been a central concern for centuries of Jewish thinkers. Rabbi Akiva taught in a 3rd century text, Pirkei Avot, which many of us are familiar with. He taught a paradox. All is foreseen, yet free choice is given. All is foreseen, yet free choice is given. 13th century theologian Gersonides believed that we have some freedom because God has foresight only of things in general. 14th century Jewish philosopher Chasdai Kreskis believed that all of a person's actions are predetermined at the moment of their birth, as is their judgment in the eyes of God as either good or evil. He believed that there was no opportunity for repentance or redemption, period. So, dude, why have high holidays at all? Now, Maimonides in the 12th century offered yet another view by stating that everything has a divine cause, and God is ultimately responsible for our actions. So when we think we're doing something freely, we just don't realize the workings of divine providence because they're just unknowable to the human mind. So interesting. We have a bunch of different ideas here. Which resonates for you, if any? What do you think? Now, the question of free will becomes especially complicated when we get to this morning's Torah portion, the Akedah, the story of the binding of Isaac. The whole free will thing is part of what bothers us every year. Abraham comes so very close to killing his beloved son Isaac just because of God's command. So one might wonder, did Abraham really have a choice? Why didn't Abraham say, no thanks, God? Did Abraham have independent free will at the moment of the command? Maybe he didn't. But what about Isaac? And what about Sarah? Or was it just a whole event of divine predestination, of determinism? The story seems to be simply a sequence of events involving God and Abraham, with Isaac in a minor supporting role, and Sarah has been left on the cutting room floor. I am relieved to say that some modern commentators have suggested a powerful, significant way that Sarah may have contributed to the Akedah, and they suggest that she exercised her free will at a critical moment in the plot. Rabbis Rachel Bierman and Paul Kipnis write midrashic monologues in the voices of various biblical characters. And tomorrow morning, I hope you'll consider joining us for our deep dive into Genesis chapter 21, which is the story of the banishment of Hagar and Ishmael. We're going to be doing a text study of that chapter together on Zoom. And part of our study, after lots of discussion, will be to write some midrashic monologues of our own. But here is one entitled, Where Was Sarah During the Akedah? I remember lying quietly in our tent. Abraham had fallen asleep beside me. My mind drifted back to my favorite memory of the day when 3 guests came to tell me I'd soon be pregnant. After so many years. I actually laughed in disbelief until the source of life reassured me it was true. With Isaac, God gave me one of life's great joys. Suddenly, Abraham began stirring and called out, Hineni, here I am. He began to talk with God. As I often did, I pretended to be asleep to listen in. At first, what I heard made little sense. Though I could only hear Abraham's responses, I sensed that God requested something involving our son, Isaac. Abraham's steady voice suddenly quivered. I thought I heard him say the word sacrifice. Had the Eternal One just commanded that my husband sacrifice our only son? Now, why would God, who had given us Isaac, take this special gift from me now, and without even speaking directly to me? For a moment, I wondered if this was my punishment for our treatment of Hagar. Through cracked eyelids, I saw my husband overcome with sadness. I had never seen him so sad, not even when we were commanded, Lech lecha, go forth to leave his land and his father's house. Strangely, I could see in Abraham's face that he truly believed that God wanted him to sacrifice our son. I wanted to urge Abraham to challenge to God as he had before at Sodom and Gomorrah. But Abraham's eyes burned fiercely, and for the first time, he excluded me from contemplating God's message. I felt powerless to insert myself in what had passed between them. Finally, Abraham fell back asleep, though fitfully as if struggling with a demon. I would give up my life before I let Isaac be harmed. I would not offer my firstborn for sacrifice. The merciful one who had blessed us with a child would not take him away. I needed air. I stepped outside to think. I walked aimlessly around the camp's altar and spied Abraham's special knife. I trembled as I thought of that knife sliding against Isaac's throat. What was God looking for? Why would God suddenly seek reassurance of our commitment? I remembered God's promise that our offspring would inherit this land and become a great nation. I always assumed that Isaac and his future bride would follow in our footsteps to lead as heads of the tribe, but I never considered just how they would inherit our commitment to serving God. My heart began to pound as I realized that Abraham had misunderstood. God was commanding an offering to help transmit leadership to Isaac. A sacrifice of the finest of our flocks was called for, not a sacrifice of Isaac. I realized then that the future of our people depended on me. I had to prevent a nonsensical death and ensure our continued covenant with God. It was on me. I had hoped Abraham would figure this out himself, but in case he did not, I had to intervene. So I went back to bed, and with my eyes closed, I planned my next step. Abraham got up early, gathered his supplies, and took off with Isaac. He didn't even try to wake me. No explanation, not even a kiss goodbye. As soon as they were gone, I gathered my supplies and took our finest ram. I followed carefully, hiding in the shadows. At dawn on the third day, as they slept, I hurried up the mountain, releasing the ram into the bushes. The rest happened so quickly. Abraham was holding the knife, about to sacrifice Isaac. He seemed to be in a trance. So in my voice that he so often called angelic, I called out, Avraham, Avraham. And that broke the trance. Realizing what he was about to do, he dropped the knife. He looked up, saw the ram that I had brought for him to sacrifice instead, and stepped toward it. Relieved at having saved my son's life and grateful at having ensured the survival of our people, I was exhausted. I cried and cried. Then I lay down on the ground for what I sensed would be a long, long sleep. Isn't that beautiful? A midrash, an interpretation, but compelling. Sarah's not included in the story, but interesting to consider where she could have been. And so again, I invite you to join us tomorrow as we consider the story of Hagar and Ishmael, and we perhaps write some of our own. So as we think about the story of the Akedah, I invite you to consider, how will your actions affect your story? Where will your choices transform your plot? Dear friends, see the various choices set before you as we enter this new year, and understand the importance of every single one of your choices. The general timeline may be foreseen by God, yet we hold so much power in our hands to impact our own lives and the lives of those around us. Where is your free will? What power have you given up? Now is the time to promise ourselves that we will take every single one of our choices seriously, and that every single action will be made with intention and compassion and care. In no other year in our lifetimes has it been so clear that God sets before us life and death and blessing and curse. Let us all choose life so that all of us may live. Whatever life-affirming choice it is for each and every one of us, we all must take the actions that are required of us for the betterment of all of us. And Ken Yehi Ratzon, may this be God's and our will. Amen.
Amen.
And now, to continue our wake-up call of Rosh HaShanah, we turn to our shofar service. We turn to page 199 in our Machzor. And it is an honor to call upon David Tillis to read for us.
Am I on now? My voice is in? Okay. Shana Tova, everybody. It's so good to see everyone. We're on page 199. Like musical preludes, 3 traditional motifs announce the highest peak of Rosh HaShanah, the calls of the shofar, the ancient sounds that we call Tekiyah, Shivarim, Teruah, and Tekiyah Gedolah. The first motif is Malchuyot, sovereignty. Here on the first day of the year, we encounter the challenges of the Aleinu prayer, to reflect on our unique identity as Jews, to meditate on what it means to praise God as the all-sovereign, the monarch of all, and to bow in reverence and submission to the creator of all. Passages from Torah, Psalms, and prophets encourage us to consider the ways that God's power is expressed in our lives, as well as on the role of the human spirit in the fulfillment of Zechariah's prophecy. On that day, God shall be one, and God's name shall be one. Wondering what it means to say, on that day, Henry Slonimsky wrote, "Maybe God and perfection are at the end, and not at the beginning. For how can God be called one, that is, real, if humankind is rent asunder in misery and poverty and hate and war? When humankind has achieved its own reality and unity, it will thereby have achieved God's reality and unity. Till then, God is merely an idea, an ideal. The world's history consists in making that ideal real. In simple religious earnestness, it can be said that God does not exist. Till now, God merely subsists in the vision of a few great people's hearts and exists only in part and is slowly being translated into reality.
Yasher Koach, thank you, David. We turn to page 202 for the great Aleinu. Please rise.
Aleinu l'shabeach la'adon hakol לתת גדולה ליוצא בראשית שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות שלא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה שלא שם חלקנו כהם וגורלנו ככל המונם ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא.
And now please join us on page 206. For our first set of shofar calls, we will bless, and we are honored to have Alex Infeld as our first Baal Tekiyah. So please join us.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר קידשנו במצוותיו וציוונו לשמוע קול שופר. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם שהחיינו וקיימנו והגיענו לזמן Tekiah Shvarim Trua Tekiah Tekiah Shvarim Tekiah Tekiah Teruah Tekiah
Please be seated.
הרשת שפתנו ירב לפניך ארם ונישא הרשת שפתנו ירב לפניך תדע מחויותינו.
Yasher Koach, Alex. And I don't know if you heard me say please be seated, but please be seated. And now for our second part of our shofar service, we go to page 262. And for our next honor and reading, it is an honor to invite Ed and Linda Pinn. Please unmute yourselves. We can't hear you.
According to Rabbi, the Holy One said, on Rosh HaShanah, recite before me words of Malcheot, sovereignty, Zicharon, remembrance, and Shofarot, sovereignty. So that you may acknowledge me as ruler over you, remembrance, so that remembrance of you may rise up favorably before me. And how shall all of this be accomplished? Through the sound of the shofar.
What is the relationship between memory and shofar? Zikarot, remembrances, the second motif for sounding the shofar, is the center of the traditional triad of shofar prayers, as memory and remembrance are central to our spiritual lives. Woven deeply into the character of the Jewish people, this theme lends an additional name to the holy day, Yom HaZikaron, Day of Remembrance.
Zichronot, a word in the plural form like Malcheot or Shofarot, refers to the custom of reciting a series of verses from the Torah, Psalms, and the prophets related to each theme, sovereignty, remembrance, and hope. The first verse in the Zichronot anthology of biblical verses is God remembered Noah, which has been called the turning point of the whole flood narrative, marking the triumph of mercy over judgment, and that triumph, perhaps more than any other theology, pervades our prayers throughout the days of law, serving to reassure us of God's faithfulness to the covenant.
Each of the three shofar themes expands and deepens our reflection on God. The Malchiyot, the image of God as the Almighty Monarch of all, conveys a sense of awe-inspiring power and the immensity that separates heaven from earth. Yikono emphasizes an altogether different aspect of divine power. Here we discover God's attentive remembrance of every human being, and here we are encouraged to notice God's imminent and caring presence in our lives.
Each motif for the sounding of the shofar is an opportunity to reflect on the different dimensions
of our
thoughts and beliefs about God.
Yasher Koach, thank you both. So we're going to turn to page 268 for our next set of shofar calls, and it's an honor to have our next Ba'alat Tekiyah be Emily Warren, who has taken on so many shofar blows for our community and has done a lot of mitzvot recently, going to local assisted living facilities and nursing homes in the area, and has just been our just super duper mitzvah shofar, I don't know what, traveling shofar, amazing person. So just had to call attention to that. So again, please rise, page 268.
Tekiah! Shvarim Teruah! Tekiah! Tekiah! Shvarim! Tekiah! Tekiah! Teruah! Tekiah!
Please be seated.
Arashet Sifateinu, Yerav Lefanecha, Ram Benisa. Arashet Sifateinu, Yerav Lefanecha, Seder Zichroteinu.
Yasher Koach. And now on page 278, we come to our third set of shofar our third part of our shofar service. And to lead us in this reading, it is an honor to call upon Phil and Cindy Rishal.
Prayers for the third and final sounding of the shofar evoke the revelation at Mount Sinai, when the people experienced God amidst thunder and lightning, and a dense cloud upon the mountain, and a very loud blast of the horn. The shofar's blast, a sound conveying warning, triumph, and celebration, here marks a moment of intense spiritual elevation, when a band of newly liberated slaves entered a sacred covenant with the divine.
The shofar, according to a midrash, signifies freedom. In ancient Israel, it was sounded to announce the coming of the Jubilee in the 50th year, a time of liberation for servants and restoration of land for the poor. In the Jewish imagination, the shofar blast remains a symbol of the here and now redemption for which Jews have prayed since we first stood at the shore of the Sea of Reeds. In our own time, as well as we pray for freedom from violence, persecution, and injustice.
In the first and second shofar preludes, we have experienced the ram's horn through the lenses of sovereignty and remembrance. We call this final set of shofar prayers and reflections the voice of hope, for the climatic Tekiyah, Godalah, is a crescendo of our most profound hopes as a people, and of our deepest personal hopes on the threshold of a new year. When the 9 individual notes of Trua unite and flow into one great expansive final Tekiyah, we feel ourselves part of a resonant call that transcends the limits of time.
Tradition imbues the final sounding of the shofar with overtones of messianic hope, a yearning for the day when, according to the prophet Zechariah, Adonai will be one and God's name will be one.
Yasher Koach, thank you so much. Now we turn to page 284, and our Ba'alat Tekiyah is one of our most beloved members of our shofar team, Rita Christopher. It is such an honor to call you forward. You are a leader of our shofar blowers. Everyone, please rise. Baruch atah Adonai shomea kol teruat amo Yisrael barachamim. Blessed are you in our lives, Adonai. You hear with love the shofar, true voice of your people, Israel.
Tekiyah. Shvarim teruah. Tekiyah. Tekiyah. Shivarim. Tekiyah. Tekiyah. Teruah. Tekiyah Gedolah.
Yasher Koach, Rita. Yasher Koach, wow. Everybody, please be seated.
Arashet sifateinu lirav lefanecha elam v'nisa. Arashet sifateinu yerav lefanecha zedef shofroteinu.
Again, Yasher Koach to all of our participants in our shofar services. Wonderful. We are now, before we turn to our concluding prayers, honored to hear some announcements from our congregation's president, Andy Schatz.
Shabbat Shalom and Shana Tova. It's great getting up here after hearing a wonderful shofar blowing. We have lots coming up on this, your favorite Zoom channel. The times of high holiday activities are included in our weekly emails and in the white trifold that hopefully you picked up this week at CBSRZ with the challah and honey. This afternoon at 2 p.m. is our children's service. Tomorrow morning at 9:30, we will have the text study the Rabbi highlighted, with thanks in advance to Alan Appel, Rick Horning, and Henry Resnikoff, who will lead group discussions. Unfortunately, due to the pandemic, we will not be able to gather together for Tashlich, our ritual casting away of sins, but we hope that you will be able to take the seeds we provided or other food and head to your favorite body of water to do that. Our thanks to the well over 50 congregants who have made possible and beautiful our time together in services on Zoom in ways we didn't think possible just a few short months ago, and thanks in large part to our tech experts, as Rabbi noted. The entire list of those who've given their time to make this work is in that pamphlet, and we will have it included in the weekly email this week. Thanks to our Gabbais, Laura Roman and Kevin Fox, for orchestrating all the different participants on Zoom. Incredible feat. And as always, thanks to those who have again led the way and inspired us with words and music, Rabbi Marci Bellows and Meg in the choir, and an extra special thank you to Cantor, Belinda, Brennan. You've given of yourself so much over these past few months, and again today in such a special way. Thank you. Next weekend, our Kol Nidra service to start Yom Kippur begins Sunday night at 7:30. And then, as you can imagine, there are Zoom services and activities throughout the next day as many of us fast. And the pamphlet and weekly email detail the services and activities in connection with Sukkot and Simchat Torah, which follow in the weeks after Yom Kippur. And we also have other activities on Zoom between now and the start of Yom Kippur. We have started several programs to bring the community together. On Wednesday night, September 23rd, we will have the second in our series of, quote, getting to know us, end quote, this time focused on the experiences of Stephen Jacobs, a congregant who is a childhood survivor of the Holocaust, freed from Buchenwald in 1945, and who, as an architect, has designed memorials at Buchenwald and for Albania, the only European country that protected its Jewish population and sheltered others. Registration is required for this event. Every Tuesday and Thursday at 5 p.m., we have our Zoom Cafe where anyone is welcome to come and talk and get to know others in the community. And some of our shofar blowers hopefully will be there. I think we'll be there on next Tuesday and Thursday, so please come. These activities and more are in the recent weekly emails, as are links to other Jewish events on Zoom from all over the world, thanks to Ellen Nodelman. If you don't have the emails, please contact the office. Speaking of which, if you are here as a guest, a special welcome, and please feel free to sign up with our office to get the weekly email if you are not already receiving it. Almost all of our activities are not restricted to members, but open to the broad community, and were even before Zoom. And we love having non-members take part in any and all. Finally, I want to note two current CBSRZ activities that are unfortunately both timely and timeless. First, as each year, we are collecting food and monetary contributions to help stock shoreline soup kitchens and pantries. The food on the beam is part of the contribution from the board of directors. As you may have guessed, the need for food has exploded with the pandemic. SSKP reports that its pantries shared food for over 900,000 meals in the whole of 2019 and has already provided more meals than that during this part of 2020. And local meal sites report 50 to 100% increases in the number of people attending. Also troubling is that food has been less available from normal commercial sources. So whereas monetary donations in the past might have been preferred to food, There is a greater need for food now than ever. So please bring food donations or checks made out to SSKP to the synagogue by next Friday so that we can deliver them to SSKP right after Yom Kippur. The second activity I wanted to call attention to is our civic engagement campaign in conjunction with the Religious Action Center of Reform Judaism in Washington, D.C., which the Board of Directors has approved as a CBSRZ program. This nonpartisan campaign, through postcards, text messaging, and phone calls, seeks to educate prospective voters on how they can register and or vote by mail without endangering themselves and others in the pandemic. To get involved, please check the weekly email or contact the office. Which brings me to a final thank you to Wendy Beyer, our temple administrator, without whom so many of the incredible array of activities of CBSRZ would never get done. Shana Tova, may your year be sweet and filled with hope, joy, and peace.
Thank you so much, Andy. So many wonderful things coming up. And now we will turn to the concluding prayers of our service. We invite you to go back now in your Machzor to page 277 for Etz Chaim, the return of the Torah to the Ark. Please rise. Got it? Got it? I got it.
Etz Chaim hi lemachzikim ba v'tomchecha meyushar tiracheha darchei noam v'chol netivoteha shalom hashivenu Adonai Elecha v'nashuva Chadesh, Chadesh Yameinu Chadesh Yameinu Kekedem.
And now please turn to page 286 for Aleinu.
Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, l'teit gedula liotze b'reishit, shelo asanu k'guyei ha'aratzot, velo samanu k'mishpechot ha'adama, shelo sam chelkeinu kahem, v'gor aleinu kechol amonam, v'anachnu korim u'mishachavim u'modim, לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד.
Page 291. יש כוכבים שאורם מגיע ארצה, רק כאשר הם עצמם עבדו ואינם. There are stars up above, so far away we only see their light long, long after the star itself is gone. So it is with people that we loved. Their memory keeps shining ever brightly, though their time with us is done. But the stars that light up the darkest night, these are the lights that guide us. As we live our days, these are the ways we remember. Our thoughts turn to loved ones whom death has taken from us in recent days and those who died at this season in years past. Our hearts open as well to wider circles of loss in our community and wherever grief touches the human family. Zichronam livracha, may their memories be a blessing in this new year and always. Please take a moment to think of those whom you may be remembering at this time, those who sat by your side as a child, as an adult, those who you remember, those who you may be remembering for Shiva Shloshim. You may be in the first year of mourning, or it may be a yortzeit. Hold them close. Know that their spirit is with you as we turn to Kaddish Yatom on page 292, and we join together. Yit gadal v'yit kadash shemei Rabba, be'alma divarach erutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon u'v'yomechon u'v'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael, ba'agala u'v'zman kari v'imru amen. Yehei shemei Rabba mevarach le'olam u'lalmei almaya, yit barach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, V'yitadar, v'yitalev, v'yitalal, shemei d'kudsha brichu, le'ela u'le'ela mikol birchata v'shirata, tush b'chata v'nechemata, da'amiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shalama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol yoshvei tevel, v'imru. Amen. May the source of peace bestow peace on all who mourn, and may we be a source of comfort to all who are bereaved. And let us say together, Amen.
We conclude our service this morning on page 299 with our tried and true Ein Kelohenu.
Ein Eloheinu, Ein Adonenu, Ein Kemachenu, Ein Kemoshienu, Mi Eloheinu, Mi Adonenu, Mi Kemachenu, Mi Kemoshienu, Nodel Eloheinu, Nodel Adonenu, Nodel Machreinu, Nodel Moshienu, Baruch Eloheinu, Baruch Adonenu, Baruch Malkeinu, Baruch Moshienu, Atzahu Eloheinu, Atzahu Adonenu, Atzahu Malkeinu, Atzahu Moshienu.
May we all be blessed with good health, with sweetness, with goodness in this new year. L'shana tova tikatevu, and Shabbat Shalom.
Is that true?